Affairs don't begin in the bedroom, they begin in childhood. In the part of you that decided she needed to bury her truth just to be loved. The part that's now screaming to be seen. I'm Alex Croxford, and this is the Deeper Love podcast, where we name the shame, face the guilt, and help you find your way back to yourself. So let's begin. Almost every woman that I work with says the same thing, that in the affair she felt alive. And it's so funny because a lot of the times what I see is they don't talk about the man or the woman that they had the affair with. It's always about how they felt in the experience. That is always the biggest takeaway. And the thing that I also see to be true is, yes, these women feel alive in this experience, but there's also so much shame for having felt that in such in an immoral way. Let's just put it like that for 1 second. But I want to invite the idea or the question, what if the aliveness wasn't about the affair or the affair partner at all? Here's what I know to be true. Many women aren't just ashamed of what they did. There is this deep sense of shame for being the one who liked it, right? They felt confident, they felt desired, they felt sexy, they felt seen and heard, and that is really hard to admit for any woman who would consider themselves moral or good, or someone who wouldn't have acted in such a way. It feels so hard to say out loud, like, yeah, I felt really good in this experience, even though it's caused so much pain. I felt amazing. But the thing that we get really confused about is whether the aliveness comes from the affair partner and this experience of numbness and deadness comes from our relationship or our marriage, because actually that keeps us stuck in thinking that our access to aliveness is based on something external. Like, if I leave my husband for this person, I am going to feel alive and sexy and seen and heard and understood. And if I stay with my husband, I'm never going to feel that way. But I actually beg to differ on that, because aliveness in the construct of an affair is based on secrecy and the fantasy of it all and the drama and the validation and the being chosen and this, scuttling around in the dark and finding these stolen moments of time together. That gives a false sense of aliveness. But what aliveness really is, and this is what gets exciting to me, because this means that we can access it outside of something that has to be secret or sordid in some way. Aliveness, true aliveness, is accepting all of you. Even the messy parts, even the parts that you think you have to hide away and they are disgusting and they are shameful and no one ever should see that part of you, or the fact that you are afraid to cry in front of people or show any of your emotions in front of people. Like, being able to accept that we are a messy human and we do things that don't make sense sometimes. And we do things that do hurt people that we love. And we do things that leave us and other people feeling hurt and lost and confused. That is unfortunately being part of a human. that is part of being a human, right? We are messy. There is no such thing as a perfect human being. And anybody who tries to be that perfect human being is living a lie, because it's just not true. It's not real. It just doesn't exist. Trust me, I tried. It doesn't exist. So accepting ourselves, even the parts that we are ashamed of, is one of the first keys to aliveness. Because actually, I want to backtrack a little bit. Let me tell you a little story. So one of my clients recently, and I'm not going to be giving much detail because of confidentiality, but I think this is really interesting for you all to hear. We were working on this, on her sense of aliveness and where it went since the end of her affair. And I took her into a practice, which is a very standard practice for me to do, but this one we particularly worked around the aliveness. And we went into her body and we were able to find the aliveness that's still there. She felt this freedom, this experience of wind blowing through her hair, and she was stunned. She was stunned that it was still there inside of her, and it was masked by the obligation and the belief that we have to do everything that society tells us we need to do in order to be successful. We have to have the house and the husband and the job and the kids and everything that, we are told is what's going to make us happy. But the truth is, chasing something that's going to make us happy, first of all, nothing on the outside of us is going to make us happy. I wish we all knew that sooner. But second of all, it's no guarantee of aliveness, because so often we create these tight little boxes that we're having to live inside. We've now got a mortgage and a job that it's okay, but I kind of feel like it might be sucking my soul. And now I have children on top of that, which are the beautiful, but also the hardest things I've ever done. And it's just like piling on and piling on and piling on and piling on and piling on. And it's not actually allowing any spaciousness for the human being to be able to be who she really is, because she's been blocked in by societal constructs of what life should look like. And this is one of the cruxes of being able to feel alive, is connecting to who you are beneath all of the ways that you learned you had to be in this life in order to be accepted and in order to be loved. Because every single one of us, no one has escaped this, are walking around with stories and beliefs about what it means to be a successful human and what it means to be liked and how I have to behave in order to be loved. For me, for example, just so you can have some context, I carried a story that I had to be perfect. I had to achieve a lot. I had to present perfectly. I had to be beautiful. I had to be skinny. I had to have a good job. I had to get good grades. I had to buy the house. I had to have the husband. I had to do all the things, and I had to do them really well. And I did all the things. I did them all beautifully. The only thing I didn't have was children. And that, if you've been following me for a while, you'll know that that was really the moment where everything started to crumble, because the way that I had learned to survive, which was to make everything perfect and get it all neatly put into place, suddenly fell flat because I couldn't do this thing. My periods would not come back, so I couldn't get pregnant. So really, this expression of who we are is one of the most important pieces of connecting to the aliveness that already exists within us. Because if we don't connect to who we are beneath all of the ways that we learned to survive in the world, then we will forever feel like there is only something on the outside of us that is going to make the difference. If I can just get that other promotion, if I can just get thinner, if I can just buy that bigger car, if I could just have a more expensive holiday, if I could maybe just have one more child, then I'd feel satisfied. Right? But you're never going to fill the void inside of you when it's not actually what you really want. What you really want is to connect to who you are beneath all of this stuff, living in your most authentic way. And there's lots of ways that we can do that, even now, right? It doesn't have to be this hugely dramatic thing where your whole life just burns down. I mean, also, it might be. My whole life did burn down, right? Wherever you are at is where you are meant to be. But what I would say is the most important part to me being able to connect to the aliveness inside of myself is to meet myself, really, truly meet myself, and meet all of the parts of myself who thought that she couldn't be emotional. Like, I used to hide all of my emotions. I didn't even know what emotions were, if I'm honest with you, because I had learned at a young age that my emotions weren't acceptable, that I had to be quiet, that I had to be the good girl, that I had to be easy, right? So when I had the affair, in the aftermath of the affair and the breakdown that came with it, I could no longer, because I literally had no choice, I could no longer suppress how I felt. The emotions were literally like pouring out of me. I cried every day for a year. And I had to relearn and I had to heal the parts of me that thought that being seen as emotional was the same as being seen as weak. And that part of me that believed I had to be the strong one, she had to have a lot of love and a lot of time, and she still sometimes crops up. You know, it's this an everlasting journey. But I've worked so much with that part of me to let her know that it's safe for me to be held and it's safe for me to cry in front of Adam and that he can hold me in that. And that is another really big part of aliveness, huge part of aliveness, enormous, is feeling our emotions. Because most of us, and again, me included, up until I started this journey, however long ago it was, 7 years ago, are trying to exist only in the more positive and inverted commas emotions. So we're all trying to feel happy, we're all trying to feel excited and joy, and we're desperately running away from sadness and fear and loneliness and anger. Like, we don't want to feel those emotions because, let's be honest, they're really hard to feel. No one actively wants to sit in grief. No one wants to feel their heart broken. But the problem is that if we avoid feeling the heartbreak, or we avoid feeling the rage, or we avoid feeling the fear, we are also blocking ourselves from the true experience of joy and ecstasy and bliss. It's like we create this very narrow existence where, on the one side, we're not going to allow ourselves to feel the depth of the more negative emotions like the grief and the fear, anger, etc. So we stop ourselves. We find ways so that we don't have to feel it. So we get more controlling. It's one of my favorites. We will numb through alcohol or drugs, or we will work and work and work and work and work. Because if you're working, if you're keeping your mind busy, you don't have to feel your feelings. Or we stay in our minds all the time, thinking, 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 always thinking, always thinking, always thinking. Because if we're thinking, we are in our heads. If we are feeling, we are in our bodies. There's loads of ways that we find to numb how we feel. But in the blocking of the harder emotions, we are staying in the same narrow lane of the more ecstatic emotions. If you don't feel the depths of grief and sadness, you are never going to feel the true expansion of joy and bliss and ecstasy. And that's where the aliveness is. The aliveness is in the ecstasy and the bliss and all of the high vibration emotions that we can feel, peace and love. And unfortunately, so many of us are unconsciously blocking ourselves from feeling that because we're trying to stay in the very narrow lane of not feeling anything negative. So another way that we can connect to our own aliveness is being connected to our pleasure. And I could go down a whole sexual pleasure route in this episode, but it does not feel like the right space for it. So we're going to just talk about day-to-day pleasure. Like, it can be anything. How much do you savor the mouthfuls of your food? Or are you just stuffing it down your mouth as quickly as possible because you're still doing your emails, or you are trying to look after the kids at the same time, or you're just eating the scraps off the kids' plates because you're not actually sitting down for a meal for yourself? So sensory experiences such as taste are a really great way to connect to our aliveness. Slow down your meal tonight. Next time you take a mouthful of food, really savor the taste. Take 30 bites. Do it with your eyes closed if you can. Take the flavors in. Enjoy the sensation in your mouth, right? Even touch. Like, again, when you're moisturizing yourself in the morning, do it with soft, gentle, loving touch, not just slapping your moisture on and rubbing as hard as you can. Enjoy the experience of being in your own senses. Light a candle and smell the candle, or some flowers. Buy yourself a bunch of flowers. Use your eyes to look at how beautiful the flowers are, and your nose to take in the scent. Like, put some music in your ears and lie down and listen to the music. Don't be thinking, listening to the music, really getting in touch with all of your senses. On top of that, I was going to say simple things. Boundaries are not simple if we've never set them before, but having boundaries is a really important part of feeling alive. Because if we don't have boundaries, boundaries are ultimately a way to say to other people, this is where I end and this is where you begin. No, I will not do that. No, don't touch me like that. And someone understands. If you say that to them, they understand, okay, that's her boundary. That's where it ends, right? Boundaries are not the same as walls. We don't need to shut people out and push them away. Boundaries are like a white picket fence, like marking your territory. Like, this is okay for me, this is not okay for me. And when we don't have boundaries and we just endlessly let people take from us, or we are endlessly giving to other people without having any no's or having any limits, then we are going to start to feel dead, because honestly, we feel exhausted. We feel depleted. How can you feel alive when you are depleted? You just can't, right? You have to have some protection of your own energy in order to be able to feel alive. Life force energy is something that depletes over time if we don't look after ourselves. Right? Like, this is something that we really truly have to be responsible for. Another part of being able to tap into our own aliveness is speaking honestly. Like, how much do you not say what is true? How many times do you say yes when you mean no? How many times do you not tell someone that you're upset? How many times do you agree to do something even though inside you're like, why have I done that? Right? That's not true. If you're upset with somebody, like I used to never, not enough, tell my ex-husband how upsetting I found it when he would come home from work every day. Like, it was kind of a running joke, but I just never shared how much that would upset me and hurt me, because I thought that what he was going through, which was studying and working far away from the house, was more important than how I felt. So I just swallowed it down. But every time we swallow down our truth, we're again telling ourselves, we're telling our body, it's not safe to be you. It's not safe to be you. And every time you tell your body it's not safe to be you, you're basically telling your body that you're dead. If you want to feel alive, you have to be true. But the problem is that most of us were raised in families and in societies in which speaking our truth wasn't celebrated. Children were told to, basically be quiet, sit in the corner. Children should be seen and not heard, etc., etc. All of this messaging, which makes us believe like we have to just swallow how we feel, swallow what we really want to say. Often we'd have got told off if we'd have answered back to our parents, especially growing up in the 80s or 90s. That was not acceptable. So there is an experience of constantly swallowing it down, and your system is going to start to feel shut down from that. And another thing which is actually really simple, which we just don't do, because adulthood turns into mortgage payments and raising the children and maybe having a glass of wine with dinner every night, but there is very little space for what brings us joy. And I think weirdly, men are actually better at this than women, because you'll find that men have hobbies, or they'll have, a big love for football or cricket or cycling or whatever their whatever brings them joy. But as women, we find it harder to tap into our joy because we don't necessarily have hobbies as easily. But I actually think a hobby is really important. And so many women say, oh, I don't know what I do. I don't really know what I'm into. I'd say, look back at when you were a kid. Look back at your childhood. What did you love doing then? Because I love dancing. I loved dancing. So what do? I dance. Like I still dance at least once a week, if not twice a week if I can. But that brings me joy. I love it so much. I mean, my work brings me a lot of joy too, not going to lie, but I'm very lucky in that sense. But having something that is just for me, where I don't have to think about anything else, anyone else, except me and what is happening in this 1 hour's dance class, is just magic to me, right? That makes me feel alive. And this is why, I mean, there's so many other things that I could list off, but I'm going to stop them there. But this is why the truth is that the affair didn't create aliveness, but it broke through all of the masks that you wear every single day. It broke through you being the good girl, the people pleaser, the high achiever, the one that is low maintenance, the one that's easy breezy, the one that puts everybody else first. You finally woke up, or a part of you woke up, because you didn't have this sense of perpetual obligation that you were living under. It felt so exciting to have to be free, right? That part of you, or some parts of you, came alive because you weren't being the good girl anymore. But the truth is that these are lots of things that I've given you here that you can go and you can absolutely start to put into your daily life for sure. But the biggest one, without a doubt, is not being run by the pain of your past. Because that, again, all humans, unless they've really done the work, are being run by the pain of the past. And if you don't heal the wounds of your past, they will bleed all over your present. They will be old attachment wounds, fear of abandonment, fear of being trapped by love, not feeling chosen, not feeling wanted, not feeling seen, not feeling understood. Because those parts, until they are healed, will keep choosing life for you. They will keep finding you things and places and people to mirror back to you those wounds, right? It feels like in the affair, oh my God, this person sees me and they love me and they're choosing me and it feels so, exciting and I'm free. But actually, really deep down, that experience is one that is a fantasy. Because if you were to leave your marriage, I mean, some people do, so everyone's on their own journey, right? There is no judgment here. But what I know to be true is our wounds don't just go away because we have another partner. It doesn't work like that. We're all waiting to be rescued by some knight in shining armor that's suddenly going to take away all of the pain that we experience. That's not how love works. That's not how love works. And that younger part of you that chose or that learned how to survive in love and what she had to do in order to be loved, unless you meet her and let her know that she doesn't need to run the show anymore. You've got the show now. You, adult version of you, are running the show now. She will keep making decisions from her pain. It's not a conscious thing. It's a very unconscious thing. You won't even notice it's happening. But you'll find yourself attracted to similar kinds of people. Even if they look different to begin with, they'll bring a different or a similar kind of pain into your life. Or you'll find yourself shutting down again, or wanting to run, or feeling really anxiously attached to someone. And that's not because you're broken and you need to be fixed. That is because there is an unhealed part of you running the show. And that is the real key to aliveness. Because if calm love feels boring, and if intensity feels exciting, if closeness makes you panic, and if conflict makes you want to hide or collapse, then that is all nervous system patterning. And aliveness without the capacity of your nervous system to hold it turns into chaos, i.e., an affair. But aliveness with regulation, where you have a regulated nervous system, where you feel like you are calm and grounded, not all the time because we're human, but when we are able to regulate ourselves, we can experience aliveness in a calm way. And so this is why healing after betrayal or infidelity isn't about punishing yourself more. That doesn't get you anywhere. It's not going to give you that aliveness or that feeling that you really truly want. And it's also not about pushing down or suppressing the part of you that wanted more, right? She came up for a reason, but it's about meeting the parts of you that have been running the show. And it's about building the capacity to feel alive without betraying yourself or without betraying anyone else. And that is the work that we do inside the healed heart. So if the only time that you have felt fully alive was inside the secrecy of your affair, I promise you, it does not mean that you are broken, but it means that parts of you have not felt safe yet to exist in your real life. And the good news is that is healable. Thank you for listening to the Deeper Love podcast. If today's episode spoke to you, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you're ready to go deeper, you'll find all the ways to work with me in the show notes. Until next time.